And so we have 8 big, beautiful wall prototypes sitting like monoliths just south of San Diego, waiting to be rolled out across hundreds and hundreds of miles of border. However, no money, no full funding to build out these barriers. And the president, clearly frustrated over this process, but there's a little politicking involved here too, right? Joining me now from our bureau in New York City, retired senior special agent with the Immigration and Naturalization Service, Michael Cutler. Michael, this is the issue: immigration reform, national security, securing the border. This is the issue that really propelled Donald Trump to national prominence and eventually winning the Republican nomination. I think probably one of the reasons why he won the presidency in 2016. There's a little bit of appealing to the base here, and maybe ginning up his base as we head into an election in November. But on the other hand, a lot of what he's talking about is dead on target. And we should note, Michael, that apprehensions at the border are down, essentially down since President Trump was sworn in. And that is a residue of his getting tough policies.
Well, I agree with you. By the way, thanks for having me. Always great joining you, Graham. Look, I've said it time and again, this is called deterrence through enforcement. When I testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee during the Obama administration, I said that Obama's policies had, in essence, fired the starter's pistol for aspiring illegal aliens from around the world. And for those folks, the finish line was the border of the United States. Today, we're seeing the results of a very different approach. The idea that we enforce the laws and we deter the behavior that's dangerous to public safety, dangerous to national security, dangerous to job prospects for Americans. But the one thing that I wish we were looking more closely at, or that the president was, and that's interior enforcement. I know he wants to hire many more agents, but that's critical because we have to anticipate aliens will succeed in getting into the country, whether it's by running the Mexican border, the Canadian border, stowing away on ships, violating the terms of their legal admissions. We need many more immigration agents doing the work from within the interior. I hope that becomes part of the process. But here's the problem. Politicians from both sides of the aisle really don't want the borders secured, the laws enforced. They're taking campaign contributions from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and a host of globalist organizations that see in that flood of illegal aliens and foreign workers profits to be made. And by the way, how many members of Congress are immigration lawyers, both sides of the aisle? So when they see illegal aliens, they see clientele. How's that for an interesting thought?
It's a great point, Michael. And the other point that you alluded to is that, as we know, 40% of the illegal immigrants in this country are visa overstays. And so, yes, how do you go after the visa overstays? Well, you need some sort of interior enforcement. But the president, I want to read to you a couple of tweets from the president. He's talking about caravans.
Sure.
And the mainstream media is ridiculing him over this, but he's dead on target. He says, Mexico has the absolute power not to let these large caravans of people enter their country. They must stop them at their northern border, which they can do because their border laws work, not allow them to pass through into our country, which has no effective border laws. Congress must immediately pass border legislation, use nuclear option if necessary, to stop the massive inflow of drugs and people. Border Patrol agents and ICE are great, but the weak Dem laws don't allow them to do their job. Act now, Congress. Our country is being stolen. Now, there's a lot going on there. But the caravans, this is true. Yes. The southern border of Mexico is a sieve. Now, I'm not saying that Mexico doesn't enforce their laws. They do. But on the other hand, I think there's a little bit of looking the other way and allowing these people to traverse from south to north. And then once they get to the border, there's virtually no enforcement. The president's right. Mexico could stop these people from infiltrating our country.
Well, they could, but here's the thing. They used to, and perhaps they didn't want foreign competition for their illegal alien workers in the United States. So the question that I have to raise is perhaps this is an element of corruption that's happening in Mexico. Perhaps enough money is being placed in the hands of the right individuals in Mexico that aren't going to stop these people as long as they continue on their trek north. Let's remember that the cartels largely control the border, unfortunately, in Mexico. So who knows who's been gotten to, so that those folks coming up from Central America know that once they get across that border, that they have a good prospect for claiming political asylum, which is now the current situation. And again, they are then allowed to be released and disappear into the woodwork. Right. So here's one other quick component about immigration enforcement that I just wrote a massive booklet for the social contract. Immigration fraud, the lies that kill. You'll have people coming in claiming that they've been here for years when they just got here, trying to participate in DACA if we're foolish enough to enact DACA. I mean, this has to end. And I think the president gets it because he said they're going to be all trying to exploit DACA. I think he understands this problem of massive immigration fraud.
It's a good point. I want to get to that in just a second, but I want to follow up on something. Just because you are from a third world country doesn't mean that we are going to grant you asylum. Just because you're leaving a country that, you know, may have a drug problem doesn't mean that you qualify for asylum in this country. That's number one. Number two is I think that when the president talks about needing more legislation on the books, yeah, we could probably toughen up a few areas. I think probably more in the legal immigration department. I think with illegal immigration, Michael, we have plenty of laws on the books. We just need to enforce them.
We do. We do, and that takes boots on the ground, manpower that Congress never voted for. Why do you think you've never hired enough, well, we've never hired enough ICE agents? It's about creating the illusion of enforcing the laws while not actually enforcing the laws. This has been going on for decades. We need to finally bring this nonsense to a halt, and it's easy to do. Hire the agents and make it clear that violations of law won't be rewarded, won't be tolerated, but will result in punishment. And then you're on the path to solving this crisis that has plagued us for decades.
Okay, so the other tweet from the president is about DACA, and you kind of swerved into it, but I want to iterate what he said. Is DACA is dead because the Democrats didn't care or act, and now everyone wants to get onto the DACA bandwagon no longer works. Must build wall and secure our borders with proper border legislation. Democrats want no borders, hence drugs and crime, dead on target there. It's why we have, part of the reason why we have the opioid problem. But back to the important point, and that is, and you talked about it just a few seconds ago, DACA, one of the inherent problems with rewarding bad behavior, that is illegal immigration, people who have violated our sovereignty, is you really have no record to work with. So you can have a person who crosses the border today and get some phony documents in Los Angeles at a swap meet that says, yeah, I've been here since 2005. Ipso facto, they qualify for DACA. That's what the president is talking about.
That's correct. And you know, while Chuck Schumer rants and raves about how people that trespass on critical infrastructure and national landmarks should face 5 years in a federal jail, he's proposing legislation to do that. He wants to provide people who trespass on America with a pathway to citizenship. We spend almost $14 billion a year on Customs and Border Protection, the inspectors at ports of entry, the Border Patrol, support staff, over 60,000 people. Why are we going through with what's apparently a charade in the eyes of the Democrats if it doesn't matter how you come here after all? And by the way, it's only immigration law where people say there's too many people violating the law, so we can't enforce the law. Let's legalize them. And we're hearing that from the Republicans also. We don't do that with any other area of law. We have more people with cell phones and driver's licenses, but nobody would ever say we can't stop texting while driving. Why in the world is immigration treated differently? And the answer is corruption by our own government, by the political parties taking those campaign contributions that are nothing more than legal bribes.
Well, I hope the president is correct here, that DACA is dead. I say, I've been saying on this program from the beginning,
so do I.
Congress should just do nothing. You know, if you just want to turn a blind eye, I think that we ought to follow up with the database and start deporting at least the parents. That's my opinion of what we ought to do. You know, everybody in the Democrat Party and some in the Republicans say, well, you can't blame the kids. Okay, then we won't blame the kids. How about going after the parents? We have a database. That's what I would like to see. I hope DACA is indeed dead. Michael, thank you.